Yo, 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 what is up, guys? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer. I'm not gonna kid y'all, I recorded this entire video and uploaded it. Some of you probably saw that with no mic audio whatsoever. It was just unplugged. So this is now my second time fully going through this video. So let's see how much I remember from last time. But we just finished up game one of the NBA Finals with the Phoenix Suns coming out on top 118 to 105. It was a great back and forth game, especially in that first half. In the second half, the Suns started to take a much larger lead and ended up winning by double digits. But there was a point in this game where, led by Chris Middleton, the Bucks cut this thing to 7 points, so it wasn't like it was a blowout the whole time. There was some really fun basketball, some great moments like Giannis, despite like a week ago today, I believe, his knee going in a direction that it should never go, blocking a layup like he's LeBron James in Game 7 of the 2016 Finals. If you go look it up, they look almost identical. I don't know how Giannis is playing at the level that he is after that knee thing, because I would have been out for about let's say about 12 years from basketball if that happened to my knee. So he's just kind of a freak of nature. I'm super happy to see him out there on the court. Glad he was playing in this game. But really, the story of the game for me was the Phoenix Suns' big three. And a lot of people probably might scoff at that, be like, big three, whatever. It's a big three, and it's not just a big three, it's a dominant big three. Each player plays their role so effectively, and they complement each other so well. This Suns team is like the perfect example of how you build a roster in the modern NBA. Starting with Chris Paul, great facilitator, great scorer, and he, if I had to pick a Finals MVP just off of one game, he would be my pick. 32 points, 4 rebounds, 9 assists. He had another incredible run, very similar to his Game 6 run against Los Angeles Clippers in the closing game of the Western Conference Finals, where everything was a bucket, pulling up from 3, hitting tough mid-ranges, getting and ones, hitting buckets at the cup, dishing out assists. He was doing absolutely everything in this game, and despite going scoreless in that first quarter, he was dictating this game the entire way through. It was a super chaotic game. The pace kept shifting up and down, but every single moment of this game, it felt like Chris Paul was in control at all times, and that's something you appreciate the more you watch him. I didn't fully appreciate how much Chris Paul affects a basketball game until I watched him on the Thunder last season. When you watch Chris Paul play, every single movement, every single play, every single pass shot is so calculated. It's ridiculous. The way that he sees the game of basketball is something that I aspire to see even like a fraction of someday. Just the way that he dominates on the basketball court through his IQ, his passing, his shooting, whatever he needs to do, Chris Paul does it for your team. He is a perfect player to have alongside Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, who are the other two members of this big three that we'll get into in a second. But Chris Paul, in his first Finals game, for a guy that a lot of people are hoping fails, if you don't believe me, go on Twitter. Anytime Chris Paul does something good, you will see people immediately trying to discredit it. Before the game, there were tweets saying, there was someone that was like predicting that Chris Paul was going to have the worst Finals by a star player ever, and very clearly that's not going to be the case, starting off with a 32 bomb and making an early case as the Finals MVP, assuming the Suns continue this momentum and end up winning the series. Great game from Chris Paul. You never would have guessed it was his first game in the NBA Finals. Despite being a player that a lot of the narrative aside him is that he's never won a ring, it felt like he had been here before. That's how good he seemed out there. That's how much he dominated and dictated the flow of this game. He's just a master of what he does. Devin Booker, guy right next to him in the backcourt, long been the Suns franchise player, 27 points, 2 rebounds, 6 assists. This wasn't his best game just in terms of efficiency, but whenever they needed a bucket, Devin Booker got them one. In the fourth quarter, when the Bucks were kind of starting to cut into it, and it was a close-ish game, about like a 10-point game, as the clock started to tick down towards the final minutes of that fourth quarter, Devin Booker hit a couple really timely buckets, had some great kick-out passes that ended up sealing this one shut, and that's what Devin Booker does. He is a high IQ player, like Chris Paul. He has a lot of Chris Paul-esque things to him, between his ability to play make at a high level, his ability to hit that mid-range jumper, which was really what killed the Milwaukee Bucks, and we'll talk about all of that in a second when we get to the Milwaukee Bucks and their side of this game. But the way that Devin Booker plays is very Chris Paul-esque, and Devin Booker's just really good. He is a star in this league, and him and Chris Paul as a backcourt is like it's a pairing mate come from heaven. It was an incredible decision by James Jones and the Suns front office to pair them together, and I'm so glad they did, because it results in some crazy good basketball. And finally, the last member of this big three, DeAndre Ayton, with a 22-19 game. I think he's like the first player to do that in his finals debut since I think it was like Kareem or something like that. I believe that was the stat. If it's not, someone will let me know in the comment section below. But DeAndre Ayton was a dominant force. Every time there was a rebound, offensive, defensive, DeAndre Ayton was going up and snagging it, and there was nothing the Bucks could really do. And DeAndre Ayton, in my opinion, is the perfect example of the way that big men that aren't like floor spacers can still be effective in the modern NBA. You don't have to be a floor spacer, but if you're not a floor spacer in the modern NBA, you have to excel at many other things, and that's what DeAndre Ayton does. Great rebounder, he's a great post scorer, and most importantly, he's mobile enough to not get played off the court in small ball lineups. The Bucks went a little bit smaller a couple times in this game with Giannis at the center. I know it was smaller, even though Giannis is giant, but they would go a little bit smaller, and in those moments, DeAndre Ayton, he could stay on the court. Something I saw last year, and I know I always bring up the Thunder, but it's a great example of this in my opinion, is last year in the playoffs against the Rockets, they were doing their whole small ball thing, PJ Tucker at center, and we had Steven Adams. And a lot of people were like, why doesn't Steven Adams just back PJ Tucker down and score? And it's because Steven Adams just didn't have the post moves or the ability to maneuver in the paint, the mobility especially, that a guy like DeAndre Ayton has. Steven Adams would get it, and he wouldn't be able to get to his spot. He couldn't box out guys the way that DeAndre Ayton can, and he wasn't able to finish, and a lot of times he turned the ball over. DeAndre Ayton, meanwhile, is so good at sealing off his man and so good at getting in position for the pass to come in. He always creates a great lane, which also credit to the passers that get him the ball through those lanes, but he's so good at creating that lane, using his body to shield off the defender, and ultimately making it so easy for him to score baskets. And even when he doesn't get the ball with an ability to face up, DeAndre Ayton is so good at shooting a little turnaround. He even has shown some flashes of a mid-range game. DeAndre Ayton does everything that a modern big man needs to do except shoot threes. And he doesn't even need to because he's been so dominant without that. And he had his fingerprints on every single aspect of this game, similar to the way that like Chris Paul did. DeAndre Ayton, if I had to pick right now, is in second place for the Finals MVP. And I said this earlier in my video previewing this series, which if you missed it, go check that out. I thought it was a pretty good video. DeAndre Ayton has a legitimate shot to win the Finals MVP. Because of the way that he impacts the game, both on the boards and on the offensive end of the ball, as well as defensively. He had a lot of possessions guarding Giannis, and he made it really difficult for them to score down low. Every time someone was attacking the basket, DeAndre Ayton was there, matching up with Giannis and doing what he can to try and slow him down. It was a great game from the big three. Outside of them, Mikal Bridges had some solid moments. Cam Johnson is getting his master's degree and meanwhile is the X factor a lot of the time he's on the court for a team in the NBA Finals, which as an undergraduate student in college, I could never do something like that. Obviously, otherwise I'd be in the NBA. But this Suns team is such a well-oiled machine, and that big three is at the core of what they do. Surround a big three like that with great role players, and you've got a team that is now up 1-0 in the NBA Finals. On the Bucks side of the ball, it's just they need to make adjustments. The Bucks aren't screwed by any means. They fought hard in this game despite going down 20. As I mentioned, Chris Middleton had a great game, 29, 7, and 4, and he had a lot of big shots. Every time the Suns would go down there and extend their lead in that third quarter when they were up by 20, Chris Middleton would come back the other end and make another timely bucket to ensure that it didn't get to like blowout range so that the Bucks were eventually able to cut into it later in the game. Chris Middleton, great player. They're going to need this production from him going forward, especially if Giannis isn't able to play the amount of minutes that they need him to. Giannis only played 35 minutes tonight. Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, for reference, played 45 and 40 minutes. So Giannis clearly isn't at 100%, and they're still trying to make sure he stays healthy. 20 points, 17 rebounds, and 4 assists. He was impactful in the minutes he was on the court, but he just doesn't feel like he quite has the explosiveness on the offensive end of the ball. It felt like he didn't really have his maneuverability around the defenders. I don't know. Just something felt off about Giannis. And I say that, and then he had a 2016 LeBron chase down block at one point in this game. But there's just something that felt off. He doesn't feel like he's 100%, and hopefully he's able to get up to 100%. But for right now, I'm just glad Giannis is on the court, and I know he said in his post-game interview that he's also super happy to be out there. He said that when that injury happened, he thought he was going to be out for a year, so it's a miracle, and it's amazing to me that he's able to play right now, and I'm super happy to see it. I think he is going to end up impacting the game more and probably end up playing more minutes, but for right now, it just wasn't enough. And probably the biggest conundrum to me for this Bucks team this whole run has been Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday has had some great games. The last couple games, especially the closeout game against the Atlanta Hawks, Drew Holiday was so damn good. He's always been good on the defensive end of the ball, but he's been really up and down on the offensive end of the ball, and that's mainly when Giannis is playing. In the last game where Giannis didn't play, Drew Holiday felt like he was doing whatever he wanted, he was getting to his spots, he was scoring, and he was doing it efficiently. Of course, when Giannis is on the court, it's going to take away from Drew Holiday's counting stats, but the biggest noticeable thing to me is that it really eats away at Drew Holiday's efficiency. So many games in these playoffs, Drew Holiday has been wildly inefficient, and those are the games where Giannis is on the court. I don't know what they need to figure out there, whether it's a matter of spacing, where Giannis being down low prevents Drew Holiday from attacking the basket, whether it's Drew Holiday's inability to get into rhythm when he has less shots, when Giannis is on the court. I don't know what it is, but they've got to figure it out, and that's up to Mike Budenholzer, who once again did not impress me in this game. The biggest run that the Bucks went on was when Giannis was at the 5. And this is something I've been saying for so long. And Mike Budenholzer is an NBA coach that's won the Coach of the Year award, as crazy as that is. I've been saying this for so long that they should play Giannis more at the 5, because similar to the way that I just talked about DeAndre Ayton, where he's mobile, he's able to switch on different guys despite being a center, Giannis can do that. The Suns were killing Bobby Portis and Brook Lopez on the pick and roll today, especially on switches. They would just get their switch and Chris Paul, Devin Booker would just go at these guys. There was nothing they could do, because if they, on a pick and roll, they drop, those two guys are two of the best mid-range shooters we have in the league, and they'll just shoot right over them, or they'll just pop the 3. If they stay up on the perimeter and go over the screen and they end up getting switched onto them, they're just going to get cooked. And either Chris Paul or Devin Booker will get right past whoever's guarding them. Usually it was Brook Lopez in this game. And if someone steps up to meet them at the rim because they have to, otherwise they're going to get a layup, DeAndre Ayton is sitting right there on the dunker spot to just put the ball in the basket. And he's not a guy you want to give open looks to get him heating up. So the Bucks need to come up with some different defensive assessment of this roster. They've got to figure out a new scheme, because what they did tonight did not work. Giannis at the 5, I think, is a key to something. They've just got to figure out how to do that, and as well get big minutes for Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis, because those two guys are important pieces of their rotation. They can't just kick them out completely, because if they do, they're going to be running 5 guys and Pat Connaughton all the time. Because to be honest, Jeff Teague should not have played in this game. I don't know why Jeff Teague is playing so many minutes in these playoffs as of recently, but Jeff Teague shouldn't have played in this game. It just didn't make sense to me. I know they're missing Dante DiVincenzo, and he would really help out in terms of stopping those guards from scoring, but they don't have him. And so it's up to Mike Budenholzer to adjust. We're going to see if he does, and I really don't have much faith in him. But ultimately for the Bucks right now, it's just a game of adjustments. You saw some things that worked. You've just got to find out how to utilize them in the best way possible to give yourself a good chance of winning game 2, because this is a big one. You don't want to go down 0-2. Tied 1-1 going into Milwaukee would be the dream scenario for them. It's probably all they could have asked for. Obviously, the goal is to win both, but against a team like the Phoenix Suns, who have a crazy home court and are just a really good team, you'd be happy going back 1-1. So I'm interested to see what happens in game 2. I think it's in 2 days from now. I appreciate you guys watching this video. Like I said, this is my second time recording it. I think I got to most of the points that I wanted to get through. So let me know what your thoughts were on this game. I'm looking forward to covering more of the finals games. You're going to get a video like this for every single game, so be on the lookout for that. Make sure you like and subscribe. If you made it to this point, drop a shout out to the Suns Big 3. I don't know, in the comment section below. I'll see you guys later. Real one, say it back.